What's up, Scyushi Squad? We back in some more Trove, and today we're going to be talking about the Shadow Hunter Rework Update 1 or version 2. I don't know, whatever you want to end up calling it. Most of all, in today's video, we're going to actually go into U10. I'm going to show you guys some difference in damage numbers and give you guys a bit of my feedback because we got a pretty substantial update to the class. Keep in mind, all of this is subject to change, right? Like, we're still on the test server. We still got plenty of time for it to be ironed out. He's almost perfect. I mean, there's the point where the class is very, very powerful right now, which I'm really happy for. But there is a couple discrepancies that I just personally feel needs to be tweaked a little bit. Most of all, the seeker missiles, or shadow seeker. Sorry, I always call them seeker missiles. I'm always going to call them that. I just can't get that out of my mind. But the seekers they're still very inconsistent with actually hitting their target. They do a lot more damage and they're a little bit more consistent with casting them, because it felt like before 50% of the time they just wouldn't end up casting. And now it's 50% of the time they just miss their target. But the ultimate ability, the base attack, everything is way better. The only other problem that I would say is that they ended up nerfing the movement speed buff. And I'll kind of explain why I feel that was really weird, because otherwise, like, we used to get, I think, 180 movement speed, and now we're at 150 after we end up doing our roll. Obviously, I have movement speed on all of my gear, so I got a pretty decent amount of movement speed. But generally speaking, it seems like a lot of people are saying, no, you don't need to buff his movement speed back up. Shadow Hunter shouldn't be the best at everything. And to those people, I say, Shadow Hunter's movement speed wasn't the best. Like, what are you talking about? There's other characters that are still, like, super duper powerful and can absolutely wreck anything in U10 and do a really good job in Delves, Neon Ninja, Dino Tamer. There's these classes that have Lunar Lancer, significantly more movement speed than the Shadow Hunter after this debuff. And are still very capable classes and very powerful, because who are we kidding? Pretty much anything in U10 gets one shot by every class anyways. So let me just show you guys a little bit of a prime example here. So just to keep in mind, we were doing roughly 8 mil damage per shot on the live server currently with our rapid fire, and now we're doing 23 mil. So that's awesome. I'm not kidding. We can shred through dungeons now. It's great. One problem, if you can even call it a problem, it's a nitpick, okay? Is that they didn't end up changing it so that the Shadow Hunter's class durability shots phase through enemies. So we still have the problem of, if an enemy target gets in the way of another target, it prevents us from killing that secondary target for a slight delay. And we're talking, the difference between the classes is most of all that take Lunar Lancer versus Shadow Hunter, for example. Lunar Lancer is going to do a better job dungeon farming because your speed is consistently faster, especially with this nerf now, and then you're also going to end up one-shotting similar to the Shadow Hunter, but you're going to be able to kill all 3 of these enemies at once. However, Shadow Hunter can kind of make up for it now, which is why I don't really have that many complaints, because our trap and our other abilities, generally speaking, are going to be that much stronger as well. So is this an Cursed Skull? Yes, it is. So this will activate this and throw down a trap, kills everything, throw down our trap, kills everything. Problem solved. Even though our shots still don't end up phasing through anything, it's no problem because everything just dies so super duper quickly anyways. Now, another thing too is that despite the fact that I keep complaining about seeker missiles need to be more responsive and work a lot better, generally speaking, I don't think anybody's going to use seeker missiles in Uber worlds, at least when you're powerful enough to just use your base attack for everything, because the seeker missiles are really tough for somebody like me to generate because everything dies so quick. And I'm not saying that as a weird flex or anything. I'm literally just saying, like, it can be a bit of a problem when everything is pretty much dead the second I end up attacking. So I can't actually end up generating more seeker missiles. So generally speaking, I'm just never going to end up having the function of the seeker missile. But we'll throw 2 of them down. You see the first seeker missile hit, the second one missed. And the first one ended up doing 39 mil. Not bad, keeping in mind that this is all without using pots. So if I actually end up using a pot, well, we're doing 60 mil damage per shot, so that's pretty crazy. Our ultimate, the connection shot, is going to end up doing a significant amount of damage. Usually it ends up doing max damage. And then there's the damage over time, which is doing, as you saw, roughly like 30 mil per shot. They also ended up nerfing the cooldown of Sacred Arrow, which is awesome. Generally speaking, I don't like, my complaints for the character are very minor and very personal. Okay, I want to be very clear about that. If this is what ends up going live, I'm okay with it. I would prefer it if I could be a little bit faster, but at the same time, it's like, whatever. I can't really say anything about that, you know? Now, unfortunately, I can't really end up testing out our ultimate damage just because I would basically need to try it out on a Leviathan, and I don't have one handy right now because, good Lord. The funny thing is, guys, that I'm very happy to report, and I hope that the devs don't end up nerfing this, but as of right now, you can kill a Leviathan with the Shadow Hunter. It brings a tear to my eye. Like, I could cry with the excitement that I have that my favorite class in the game is finally reaching its true potential. And a lot of that is not only because of the rework, but because the game is, or the combat numbers are running in 64-bit now. So don't ask me about all the math and stuff because I'm not gonna act like I know what I'm talking about. But basically, Trove's combat code was based on a 32-bit, which meant that the numbers could only go up to a certain value. But in this recent patch that we're having on the test server, they ended up changing it to 64-bit, which means that the health of enemies can go a lot higher and our damage numbers can go a lot higher. Visually, we're still seeing max numbers at 100 mil, right? So I don't know if that's ever going to end up changing, but there was, you know, my buddy Nintendo was saying how he ended up fighting the Leviathan, or not the Leviathan, the Dreadnought, and its health is like over, it's like 9 billion now or something like that. The point is that the 32-bit health bar could only go up to like 2 billion or something. So now it can go substantially higher, which means that a lot of enemies don't need to have as much darkness and light value to them. Darkness being basically an armor stat, light being the armor penetration stat. So let's go over the slight changes that we've had to the Shadow Hunter within this first patch. There's going to be multiple patches. And then I also want to briefly mention that I know that we still haven't had a video dedicated to talking about the other class reworks, because that's right, folks. If you haven't caught my stream talking about it all, because we kind of ended up exploring it in there, a lot of the classes ended up actually having a rework or a buff or a rebalance. I don't know. We're just gonna call it a rework because even though it doesn't necessarily change any of the abilities, it completely changes the class. Like Candy Barb mains, you guys are going to be happy to know that Candy Barb can be mained. Boomeranger can also be mained because they ended up just completely changing the damage numbers. I'd like to see Boomer a little bit higher there. There's a couple of abilities that are a little bit broken on him. Vanguard also got a lot stronger and stuff. But like I said, we'll save that for another video. Today we're just talking about the Shadow Hunter specifically. So I do have references to the like the original PTS patch, so I'm not going to be comparing the damage that we're doing, the damage changes that we're talking about to the live server. These are going to be from the previous iteration, which I already had my video talking about that anyway. So the Gem Shadow Blitz, which is going to end up being our class gem ability, has had the attack increased to 350%. It was originally 200%. Thank you, developers. Seriously, Shadow Hunter finally shines. They also fixed a bug that would affect the basic attack damage, which ended up pretty much messing up all of your abilities across the board, because the way that the Shadow Hunter works is his abilities scale off of his base attack. So oddly enough, when you ended up putting on the class gem, it ends up lowering the overall damage from your other abilities. That might still be the case just because of how Trove calculates things, which means that you could potentially do even more damage with your ultimate ability if you didn't have the class gem. But why would you end up doing that? You'd have to be crazy to do that. So they ended up reducing The movement speed bonus from dodging, it was like 60% or something like that, and now it's 35%, so they did a pretty significant nerf to it. 60%, 65%. Either way, I still wish that the movement speed was a little bit better than that. Fixed a bug where VFX for the dodge speed boost would happen within the coin challenge, so you wouldn't actually, as far as I know, you wouldn't actually gain the speed boost while you were in a coin challenge, but it would end up playing these video effects, which, by the way, look at this. The VFX looks cool until you look at it from the back and you realize that it's just an X. TFM showed me that and I just thought, like, what the hell? That looks terrible. Shadow Seeker, additional tweaking to the Shadow Seeker behavior. Good lord. So they increase the damage for each seeker fired. So the way that these work, we've already talked about this, is each individual Shadow Seeker is going to end up having a different individual damage number. So if I can end up building these up right here, we're not really going to be able to see them, unfortunately, because they all kind of explode at once. But if I shoot them, they're more consistent with how they work, and all of them just do max damage because these training dummies have no resistance. But they have it so that the first seeker fired does 450% damage, up from 250. The second one does 575, up from 450. The third one does 725, up from 550. The fourth one does 950, up from 650. And finally, the last seeker missile, when it connects, does 1100% damage, up from 500. They also slightly increased the seeker generation, which is quite literally the missiles shooting more often, because there was the big problem where half the time they just wouldn't cast. Now they do, which it seems to be a lot more consistent with the shots. However, I have had them still miss their mark very, very often. And I think that's because, as we've said before, I'm pretty sure the seeker missiles are basically, it's basically coded as a minion or an ally. So it's like when they end up getting summoned, you'll notice that they kind of follow you around unless there's a target nearby, and then they go towards that target. But sometimes they can explode prematurely. So then there's also the Sacred Arrow. The ultimate ability has increased projectile speed and increased the damage to 550%, up from 300. And then the damage is 0.5 seconds. The dot, sorry, is every 0.5 seconds. It'll end up damaging an enemy for a total of 8.5 seconds, up from 7.5. So the dot lasts significantly longer. Also deals 750% damage on first contact enemies, and they also ended up reducing the cooldown slightly, which is absolutely awesome. Again, you know, if you want to know all of these details, we pretty much have them in our Discord, like, at all times. But otherwise, I'll have another video that's going to highlight the other class abilities and so on and so forth. But if we end up shooting our arrow, you can see it shoots way faster. Again, do not take these numbers to heart, because we're not doing this much damage to normal enemies in U10. We can end up doing significant damage when we end up popping a flask, which is absolutely awesome. Let me actually chromatic. Yeah. So basically, the way that you would end up playing the character now is very similar to what I had thought previously, where you kind of play it like the gunslinger, at least in terms of a boss killer, where you're going to be, you know, using your pots as often as possible, and then you're just going to be using your ult as often as possible to get as much dot as you can. Actually, I would say, rather than using chromatic and martial, you might be able to get away with using chromatic and zealous, just because of the energy, so that you can end up casting your ult again and again and again. But I don't know. I mean, we'll kind of have to wait and see what ends up happening with that. But anyways, I just wanted to have this as a quick little feedback video, let you guys know what's going on, give you a quick update as to how the Shadow Hunter is faring. And so far, it's doing pretty good. Like, seriously, I'm very, very happy with where the Shadow Hunter is right now. Albeit, I still do wish that we had the extra movement speed. And even though I would prefer it if my shots would phase through one target to another, it's not a big deal, because now we have our trap doing like a pretty decent amount of damage anyways, and can end up destroying anything in U10, to say the least. Now, I'll have another video at some point talking about the Shadow Hunter in the Delves, but I don't really want to do that right now, just because the damage numbers are constantly fluctuating. So I'll probably end up doing that either on stream or when Shadow Hunter Rework actually ends up going live, which still could end up being as soon as next week, if not the week after. But anyways, I gotta get this video out to you guys and ready for you guys because Dying Light 2 is coming out in like an hour. So I gotta stream that. Anyways, thanks for coming out. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want, support the channel, and have yourselves a wonderful day, ladies and gentlemen.